Llefarydd UKIP spokesperson Michelle Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In April last year, a survey conducted by the Education Workforce Council at your behalf found that 90% of teachers said they were unable to manage their workload. One of the teaching unions said that the survey showed that many in the teaching profession are at breaking point. At the time, he said that as a priority, you were determined to tackle the long-running issue of workload and ensuring teachers have the space and time to teach the best of their ability. For the sake of this teaching staff, it's vital that something visible is done to address this. What's your assessment of progress on reducing teacher workload so far, Cabinet Secretary?
Well, the member is right to say that workload is a continuing concern for the workforce and indeed for me. Workload concerns vary greatly across the education family, however. Different issues and priorities are raised depending on a variety of factors, including which school phase somebody finds themselves working in, rurality, deprivation, subject area or the role that they have within an individual school, as well as individual operating practices demanded or deemed by the leaders of those schools. Our aim is to build capacity and reduce excessive workload, leading to improved standards for our children, but also a better ability for teachers to manage their workload.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Cabinet Secretary. One way to reduce teacher workload, apart from reducing the amount of paperwork they're required to do, which I didn't hear you mention, would be to reduce class sizes. This is something that I feel quite strongly about. That would be to the benefit of both teacher and pupils and go a long way to delivering the world-class education that I know our teachers are capable of providing if they're allowed to. Do you agree with me, and if so, what measures have you implemented to reduce class sizes?
Well, on the issue of paperwork, we are carrying out a bureaucracy project to look to see what paperwork we can take away from teachers. We're employing business managers via our pilots, so those tasks that are not related to teaching and learning can be taken on by another professional in the school. And we have sent out a myth-busting document that demonstrates quite clearly our expectations of teachers. Now, for the first time ever, there is something that Michelle Brown has said that I do agree with. I agree with you that class sizes are incredibly important, and that's why we have made resources available to local authorities, both capital and revenue, to help them reduce class sizes in the areas of education where we know that that policy will have the biggest impact. And those are our youngest children and classes which have high levels of deprivation or high levels of children who do not have English as their first language. And I would be very happy to write to the member to provide her with an update of the plans that local authorities in North Wales have come forward with, if she's interested.
I would be very interested, Cabinet Secretary, and thank you for that answer. Moving on, local authorities are under increasing pressure from Welsh Government to set aside land for housing, and new housing is being built across Wales in anticipation of a rising population. Welsh Government's keen to develop Wales and attract people in. I have no problem with that. What I want to ask, though, that in light of the likely rising population in Wales, what plans have you put in place to ensure that there are sufficient places in schools to properly educate additional children?
Well, the planning of school places is primarily the responsibility of individual local authorities, who I would expect to be able to ensure that when dealing with, for instance, new housing developments, that they have taken into consideration the ability of people who may live in those areas to be able to respond to educational needs. If the member has any examples where she feels that is not happening, I'd be very interested to hear from her, because we can take that up with individual local authorities. I recently had the privilege of opening a new school in the Newport area, built in an area of the city which is experiencing a great deal of house building, and in that school, the school is going to grow as the community grows. So they have an intake of reception and year one, and as the community grows around it, there are spaces available in that school, and that's an example of a local authority really having some forethought about how they plan for increased housing and demand on education in their area.